As we get into, as we, we move into our final panel for the day, and even before we get into that, we wanted to share with you a testimonial from one of our collaborators, Miss Christina Singh. Some of you must know Christina as the founder and CEO of the Shagaramas Farms Limited, UPIC Farms. She's a young lawyer, entrepreneur, and restaurateur, owner of UPIC Farms and Restaurant. It was while studying in England that her love for cooking and enjoying wholesome, healthy food inspired her to pioneer the farm-to-table experience in her home country in Trinidad and Tobago. The motivation for cultivating sustainability is her firm belief that everyone deserves and should be able to enjoy delicious organic nutrition.
I would say my journey started in my mom's kitchen. This is where I grew my love for food and my fondness for food and my passion for food. I always kind of secretly knew to myself that I was going to get involved in the industry even though I was not familiar with it. My background is in law and business, but again, food is something I've always been very passionate about. When I saw the farm for the first time, I just knew instantly that this was something that was going to be incredible and unique, and something that I thought that people would have appreciated. And I wanted to bring a whole different concept for the food industry, where I was able to create something like the farm to table concept, which again was something unique and something completely different to what we see in Trinidad today. So this is where I started. I think when it comes to challenges that young female entrepreneurs may face, judging from my own personal experience, I would say that you will get people questioning your abilities, especially being a young female, questioning your decision making, and it's something that may hamper your judgment. It's something that you have to just sound out the background noise and tunnel vision it through.
Indeed, sometimes you do have to tunnel vision it through and just stay focused on what you want to achieve, what you believe in, and get into that space. And as we talk about, as we explore some of those notions, I want to introduce our third panel for today's conversation. Our discussions so far have focused on women in leadership, women in communities, how women shape societies, and our role as game changers. And as I think we can agree that Christina definitely is a game changer in terms of what she's been able to do with the UPIC farm. Now we're going to get into a conversation as to how do we create the right enabling environment, whether we have already done so or if we haven't, what do we need to do so that women can thrive, and what it means to society where you want to also create balance. And I think we've assembled the right group of men and women to take us through this discussion. I'd like to introduce to you now in this forum, Mr. Brian Lewis, which really I didn't know how to introduce Brian because I think he needs no introduction, but he is the immediate past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. He is the president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees. Brian joined the TTOC in 1997, but it's safe to say that he has spent a lifetime in sport and is committed to making sport a catalyst for national development, youth achievement, and sustainability. He has established a reputation as a creative and insightful thought leader, and he's not someone who's afraid of sharing his thoughts, as controversial as they may be, but also challenging us to think differently. And without a doubt, he is in fact a champion for sport and for youth. Evie Parkinson is the founder of Mind-Body Transformational Therapist at Harmonious Infinity. And I practice that word, Evie, so Harmonious Infinity, a company she started in 2013. Her goal is to help people live healthier and happier lives in the most unique and natural way possible. And I don't think that any of us could disagree with that. It's one of the things that we all strive for. She helps people find their own physical and spiritual harmony based on their unique characteristics and needs. After more than 40 years in leading human resources and industrial relations functions in both local and global companies, it may be safe to say that Martin de Gans knows a thing or two about people. For more than 25 years, or more than 25 of those years, he's operated at the executive level, working with and providing sound practical advice to CEOs and other executives, and leading diverse HR teams. And finally, rounding off our panel, Heidi Ann Harper Simmons's CV reads like someone who has a love of learning and a desire to give back to her country. A youth development officer at the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, Heidi Ann gave up her job as an accountant to become a sport administrator and coach, because she believes that sport can empower and mobilize young people to excel and succeed. She's also the track coach with the Simplex Athletic Club, I'll get that word eventually, junior development team, where she works with the sprints events. Ladies and gentlemen, good day, it's still day, and it's not yet afternoon. You are rounding off our conversation today, but I know that this panel is going to be every bit as energetic and vibrant as we've had so far. So thank you very much for joining us, and welcome. Martin, if I could kick it off with you. In your experience, have we done a good enough job in creating an enabling environment for women to thrive?
Well,
no pressure, Martin.
Well, in fact, I'm a little bit gun shy right now. But I think if you really look at the 8, 9, all the women who've been on, yourself, I think the answer to the question must be yes. I mean, we've just listened to the last couple of hours to some very, very powerful ladies.
Yes.
In fact, they could make men feel very intimidated, to be quite frank, But I wanted to mention one thing that, in terms of the previous speaker, just something I wanted to mention. An example of something. Maybe 3-4 years ago, I worked with an individual, young lady, very ambitious, very good. And after some years, she went off to an international company based in Trinidad. And then one day she said, let's have lunch. So in having lunch, she tells me, I've seen a position advertised international, but it's really only open to citizens of the US. And I said, why is that stopping you? Why don't you? Do you want it? She says, yes. I said, well, put in the application, acknowledge it says that, but convince them you are so good.
Yeah.
And a month later, she told me, I got the position. And let me tell you, since then, she has been flying high. And it speaks to the point previously, when you want something, go after it. And don't be afraid to tell whoever that you want it.
Yes.
So I just had to mention that example because she came to my mind. And the other one is another young friend of mine in the field who once invited me to coffee. And after we finished coffee for half an hour or 45 minutes, she says, okay, well, I'll set this up for the first Thursday in every month we'll have coffee. And I didn't realize that I had just got suckered into mentoring, but very nicely she did it. And we kept it going. And she has always been eternally grateful for the opportunity to talk to somebody older, you have more experience, that kind of thing. So I just thought I would mention that. So on to your question, no, Madam Speaker. In fact, no, one other thing I must mention, one of your previous speakers I worked with for a number of years. We both operated at the executive level. That's Carrie Ann.
Yes.
So as all the speakers were speaking this morning and Carrie Ann was speaking, I was rating myself as a male. Oh, I interacted with her. I think I passed. But I will have to ask Carrie Ann when I see her whether I passed it or not, Anyway, but all right, so let me start by saying that creating this enabling environment for women to thrive is a work in progress. That's how I will describe it. And when I think of my 44 years working in Trinidad and Tobago, we have made strides. There's no doubt in my mind we have made some very positive strides in creating this environment. And I think the fact of the ladies here this morning is an indication, and many more females that I've worked with, I talked to, we have done well. There's no doubt about it. Now, the question is it good enough? And I guess that answers itself. It's never good enough, and you must never be satisfied. You must keep pushing and pushing and pushing. There's room always for continuous improvement. But that does not say that we must not acknowledge our achievements today. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to follow some notes I took here, ma'am.
Okay.
And we have a lot to be proud of. Let's look at women in leadership position in all walks of life. In sports administration in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's the area I can speak about, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you look within companies, whether you look within unions. In fact, just recently, leadership of the university is now in the hands of a female. I mean, more often than not, when you're seeing appointments being made, more often than not, it's a female, right? But that is not to say there are not areas in society which appear to be moving at a slower pace. There are some areas which are moving at a slower pace, and we must find a way to bring them along. The ultimate goal is equality. The question is defining equality. Is it defined in terms of numbers? Everything must be 50-50. Is it defined at a national, at a company, at what level must you be 50-50? Or is it really the opportunity, or women have the same opportunities as males to achieve whatever it is they wish to achieve in their lives, whether in organizations, in society, in families? The aim is help you to achieve whatever it is you wish to achieve. Now, going forward, the positive changes that we have seen must be properly anchored, as with all change. If it isn't properly anchored, it will slip away. So we have to make sure in moving to the next step, we anchor what is there, at the same time moving to the next step. And at an individual level, it is noteworthy, as I heard somebody say, when one looks at the level of the university, in every facet of life, the pipeline, and this is an important point, I think, apart from who is in current CEO positions or board positions, there is something we refer to in leadership planning as the pipeline. That is the people at lower levels coming through. And when you look at those levels coming through in middle management and wherever, females are dominating it. In fact, the question is being asked, where are the males? And I think that is something where maybe, as I put here, maybe in years to come, we won't be having the focus on women, but maybe the focus may be on the males. Where are they? All right. So let me just, those are my opening comments, ma'am, and I leave it at that.
Yes. Thank you. Heidi Ann, as you heard Martin's opening remarks and some of the issues that he pointed to, some of the comments, and sort of a setting of a landscape, so to speak, from your own perspective, you walked away from, in one sense, from the corporate space. You stepped into sport and into a developmental role. Was it easy for you? Was that transition easy for you in terms of expectations? People may have had expectations of you that they're now seeing, that you were stepping away from. Was that transition easy? And would you say that the environment was facilitating for you to get into, to make that change?
Good morning, everyone, panelists, fellow panelists, and participants. It's my pleasure to be here. For me, it was about finding my purpose and finding out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to become. And then when I found my purpose, I had to come up with a plan because I was married. I had a young child. I think he was about 2 years old. And I had to figure out where did they fit into my purpose and into my plan. Would loving myself, self-love, and loving my family, how do I balance it? And for the entire morning, we've been hearing about balance. Everybody's saying balance. And it was about finding that balance. It was about being me, but not leaving my family behind and merging it and bringing it together. It was about staying focused, motivated, and on track. Now, as you know, I was a national athlete before, so I understood what sport can do and what change sport can bring about. And I wanted to impart that to young persons coming up. So it was easy because I am goal oriented. I knew exactly what I had to do to transition, and I'm still transitioning, and I'm still working on it. But yes, it was pretty easy. I am a youth development officer now, and I guess, as you said, I just believe that I am here to as a mother, as a nurturer, not just to my son, but to my country as a whole, lending my service and my passion wherever it is needed.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Brian. And let me just say that unfortunately I think we've lost Evie, if only for just a while. Her internet access has been giving trouble, so I'm hopeful that she may rejoin later on. But we are pressing on. And Brian, I want to bring you in on this discussion at this stage. The question of equality and as an adjunct to that, equity in the system. The whole notion that there is an enabling environment to some extent. Has it gone far enough? And what do we need to do to strengthen that and to make it more secure as women grow into leadership roles?
The most important thing, good morning to everyone. The most important thing to not fall into the trap is complacency. while we have made significant progress, we have moved from the copper to electric stoves and from bicycles to electric vehicles. The reality is that we still have far to go. And my great concern in the context of equality and equity is that some of the too many times we don't respect and recognize history and those who have laid the groundwork, whether it be Dr. Anita White from the Brighton Declaration in 1994, whether it be pioneers. We also allow privilege and the fact that some of us are the beneficiaries of the pioneers and the allyship, mentorship, femship to let us lose focus, to create the environment for women to thrive. Sport is a microcosm of society. In sport, there is still a glass ceiling. There's a glass ceiling of sexism, racism, antagonism towards transgenders. So, while I recognize that we have made progress, the reality is that there's a difference between leadership in this situation and management. We need leadership. We need people who are brave and courageous to go and lay the groundwork. And a lot of times in creating the enabling environment, there are so many things that intersect. One, not all women experience sexism the same way. People who come from a different class, elite, money, affluence, have a different experience of discrimination than those who come from poverty, working class, etc. And too many times people forget that, because when you're talking about creating an enabling environment, it's just not for athletes, youths, young girls, leaders. It's for your staff. It's for the lady from the cleaner down to the cleaner who is a single parent struggling to make ends meet from your pittance. And even when women become leaders, they forget that because they look through a different lens. And as a result of that, there is always the risk that the gains that are made will be lost in a moment, because it's not easy. Sport, in the context of sport, is still very much a white patriarchy. It is still male-dominated and old boys club. And even in terms of the TTOC, for there to be the first ever female Secretary General and President, somebody had to create that pathway
and champion
and make a sacrifice, to either give up a position or not hold a position to make a way for women, just as men has done it for centuries.
Yeah, and creating that space, definitely.
Yes.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, I'm seeing, and I just I want to acknowledge Edith Cox, who is with us from Turks and Caicos. Edith would have contributed to panels and this conversations such as these in the past. And Edith, I really want to welcome you, as well as others who are contributing. We have a question in here from Michaela Johnson, who is very much interested in understanding how young people who want, young people who want who want opportunity or seeking opportunity and are facing obstacles, how they can, one, participate in the real dialogue, and two, how can they, I guess, break through those barriers and some of the barriers that Brian is speaking to, in terms of sometimes you have to have advocates and allies who are willing to step back and say, listen, we need to create a different kind of dynamic, to think differently, as Sasha and Raquel and Carrie-Anne and Cleo would have said at the start, and to really move into that space. Heidi-Ann, did you have some of those allies? Were there people in your space who said, did as Martin did, and just, laid down the rule and said to his friend, go after the job. It doesn't matter if you're not, you're not a citizen of the country. If you are the best, they will pick you. Did you have that?
For me, I created that. And how did I create that? I looked at women that were ahead of me, Catherine Ford. I watched how she was gentle, and if I approached her, how she treated me and how I felt. And I wanted to be like that. She didn't know it. I didn't tell her. And I just had role models women that I observed for myself and emulated. Now, I know not everybody has the ability, and not all young women have the ability to do the same. And like Brian said, some people just don't know how. And that's for me what I am, to guide. But how do we create direct change through conversations, and support one another. I had a group of friends, peers, my age, women, we all are from different facets of life, that we used to meet on a Sunday on the beach with all our kids, and we would sit on the beach and chat, and we would offload of everything that we faced during that week. You understand? And then when we left the beach, I had the strength to face another week, because it wasn't easy. You had to deal with, one, making money. Are you making more money than your husband? How does he deal with that?
Yeah.
Then you have a son that's 2, you're seeing the crime situation changing, and you have a male son that looks like every other child that you see killed on the street. It's scary. It was scary for me. So I know I had to be involved. I had to be there for my son while trying to pursue a career. So it was not easy. But I want to say that having people and knowing that you don't have to do it alone is what helped me, because I couldn't imagine trying to do everything alone.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that we have to do, and we have to understand that we cannot do it alone. You really do need a strong system.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, you said some things there. Sorry, Martin, get in.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and that is something that my experience is, and I'm sure it's everybody's own, is that whatever challenge you are encountering, there are people who have gone through it already.
Yes.
You just need, and it's taking a little bit of risk, and people are always, to me, more often than not, willing to help if you go and you ask for the help. But you've got to, I guess, get over that hurdle of being apprehensive to ask. But sometimes when you ask, you realize, hey, they're willing to help me because they probably had a similar challenge, or they knew somebody with a similar challenge.
Yeah.
Right? You have to compare notes all the time.
Yes, for sure. And Martin, as we kind of have you on your legs, I wanted to ask, based on your experience in human resources, in HR, working with people across various organizations. Brian made the point that it's not just about creating an enabling environment for maybe women in executive or women in middle management, but looking at the enabling environment for all women across your organizations. What are some of the things that you would have had to consider, or your HR teams would have had to consider, to be able to do that in the organizations where you work?
Well, it can start at a very basic level. Just having the how should I say, the HR policies in place, and not just in place documentation, but properly explained, and the organization lives it, right? And employee education on those policies. And it ranges from as simple as non-discrimination policies, including gender, sexual harassment policies, policies which encourage mentoring in the organization. In other words, it isn't seen as you're leaving your job to do mentoring. Mentoring is what we actively encourage in the companies, right? Because it helps everybody at all levels. So you may have somebody at the level of, as Brian said, maybe you may be making coffee or tea or whatever, but that person may want to move up in the organization. So how do you encourage them, guide them with studying, getting into the next level in the organization? There are ways. So those kinds of policies, I have been lucky in a way. I spent most of my years in, well, if I'm allowed to call, First Citizens Bank and Scotiabank in Trinidad. And both of them were very, very good in terms of gender and equality. I mean, Scotiabank, where I spent the last 15 years, they had a whole initiative. So there were actually various activities throughout the year, which females, in fact, females drove it, and females could attend to and participate in it. Yeah. So you're kind of, you have teams that you're setting up to do activities, make sure it includes women in it, make sure they take the leadership roles as well. So, and then you publicize these things, the visibility, so the younger ones seeing that now, hey, I can be there too, It really, it takes an effort. Right, but the rewards are very good. I have no doubt about it.
And speaking to those rewards, Brian, at the very start, Tricia made the point that diverse teams, when organizations that really invest in diversity and inclusion, those organizations do better. The data has shown that those organizations are stronger, they are more sustainable. You've been championing and leading, if I dare say, leading that whole notion of the future is female, and really championing that conversation, even when, and I've seen it, even when it was not something that other people wanted to talk about. How have you seen that shift, not just in the area of sport, but what has helped to propel that shift that has been taking place?
Awareness conversation, I really respect and admire the younger generation. They are certainly not prepared to tolerate what the older generation may have tolerated. I have a respect the challenges the older generation face because they came out of a society at that point in time, that that generation was socialized in terms of women and women role. I may have had a different experience. My mother left a domestic violence situation to bring up a children, single parent in Belmont. So my experience of a woman is of an empowered, independent, opinionated, strong woman. So who fought for what she believed in, fought for her children, but not everyone has that experience. So for me, championing features is female, creating an environment, because the topic today in this panel is creating an environment for women to thrive. And to create that environment, there has to be a commitment from the bottom up. Because at the end of the day, the reality is that in the main, and don't hold me to it, in the main, the women who have gotten to the top have benefited themselves from privilege. Whether that may be education, class, having an ally, whether that ally be a male or a female, that's not in dispute. As Heidian said, a role model. But it is always important, and why I strive privilege, even though it may trigger people the wrong way, because all of us don't like to believe we are beneficiaries of privilege. But if we are not careful and aware, we do become the beast that we are trying to reform. It has had to be top down. So how do you create an environment at the TTOC, for example? We created an environment where the staff benefit, they were empowered, they had the capacity to support the volunteer executive members who have to do it when they have time. How do you deal with athletes? We are in an environment, you have never had a female Olympic champion. Nobody has examined why, they're just comfortable. What is required to create that environment for women to thrive? How do you deal with women's issues? And I don't know if I'm answering the question direct, but I really want to slip in the whole question in environment.
Yeah.
When we appointed a female medical doctor, there were criticism, but an athlete who won a medal at a particular games came and told me, a male, that she respected that because when she was having a menstrual difficulty during the competition, she was able to turn to a doctor who understood, who lived the challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
I put that on the table. When we talk about an enabling environment, we get the danger when you have only men around a table, and in particular, cis heteronormative men who see it from the binary of gender. I'm talking about in general. You don't get the necessary conversations.
Yeah, because different people are not covering it.
It requires courage and bravery. I can say that some of the harshest criticism I have received have come from females. When I articulated the first ever president of the IOC should be a female, I have WhatsApp from women in the Olympic movement in Europe severely criticizing me. I've been told to my face that I'm a closet bisexual because I have championed and allied gender equality. So that's important because people seem to feel that the gains that have been made, whether it's the contribution of people like Hazel Brown and all of these people who have had to fight tooth and nail for gains, that it's going to be easily maintained.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It can be eroded in an instant. That's right. Every single step that you make, you do have to consistently think about it and cogently really, fight to keep it on, keep it alive. We cannot afford to be complacent. I think that we've seen where, we've seen where we thought that we were in a particular place as a society, as a planet. And it turns out that we are not. We're seeing women challenge religious governments in a way that, we would not have seen, or we probably didn't think that we would have seen for some time. And that's now right. Women are stepping out in a place where they're willing to give up their lives.
Correct.
To achieve what they think, what some of us might think should be normal. It's table stakes. It's a given. And I think those are some of the stories, and those are some of the experiences, the very real lived experiences that we do need to take. But I want to take the opportunity here to read some of the comments from some of our participants. So Donna Walters is validating your point, Martin, that Scotia has walked the talk. While even some other international organizations, they only talk about it. Michaela, I do agree with the commitment that the commitment needs to be present in order for the environment to thrive. Very good point, Mr. Lewis. We are seeing where, Maureen Craig Russo is pointing to the fact that mentoring and supporting women is an important component of empowering women, which we are seeing the value of all of the time. The confidence building and engaging of emerging women leaders is integral. That consistent support, women supporting other women as well as men. But I wanna point to this particular comment that was made earlier on. I don't want to lose it because it was really so important. By Gillian Harper. And I think that Gillian would have made the comment during our second panel, but I think here is also a good opportunity. In the education field, we are seeing males being left behind. The female student is striving. They're making strides that tend to overwhelm the classroom sometimes. Even pairing them in peer teaching and support, the challenge remains to get them interested in and I think she's talking about the males here in reading as a window and a door to secure their future. When I was at Marabella Boys Anglican Primary, we launched Real Men Reading 2 programs, with an emphasis to encourage all of our young men to get involved and for the invisible child to be seen. And I want to commend Gillian for that kind of work, and maybe connect with Esther and with Cindy and with Liz on some of those discussions. But it does point to the fact that in a lot of ways we are seeing men receding, or we are seeing our boys not stepping in, certainly in the area of education, as we might be seeing the girls. And if we're talking about balance, and we're talking about really having that, creating equity, Martin and Brian in particular, what do we need to do? How do we arrest some of these things that we are seeing? A big question, yes, I know, but you're the two men on the table too.
If I may jump in before Martin, I believe.
Thank you,
Brian. I believe that issue is a broader issue, but it is in a reality collateral damage. My take on it is that for years and years and centuries, besides racism, sexism has been a major issue, and males have dominated everything, and it still does, even though we fly a flag and industry, etc., when they talk about all the good things they're doing. Surveys show 80-something%, if not more, of the boards and gender equality. So we have to be careful how we create the myth of inclusion and diversity. It is not a reality as yet. So for me, we have to bring on more women. We have to open the pathway for more women. And then hopefully, as we focus on developing the future leaders, females, that they will bring more inclusion and diversity to the process, because they would recall a time when they didn't have, so that when it reaches a time where males are in the background, that they will themselves strive for gender equality.
Yeah.
So my take on it is that, we have to be careful. Yes, there is work to be done in terms of the social aspect, but the reality is that women need to be flood the system before we could get back the balance.
Yeah, and it's a great point that even Raquel pointed to when in panel 1, and I think it is a very important perspective for us to bring to this discussion. Martin, I saw you jumping at the bit though.
No, I mean, I fully agree with Brian, except his concluding remark there. When he said, you first have to flood it with women. You know what? I guess I am one of those who would say, maybe we could do both at the same time. Yeah. Let's not right now. To further ignore the young males is very, very dangerous, because by the time the flooding takes place on the female side, they may be so far behind that we then take a longer period. So
Right.
that's a matter of choice. Nobody's right or wrong in that. It's just my preference to do it that way, you know. But I wanted to touch something that because Brian made a very useful about 5 minutes ago. And when you were speaking, Brian, the thought that came into my mind was unconscious bias.
Yes.
People
Yes.
don't even know we have the biases. I am talking about something as simple as in a company, you doing recruiting, and chances are you're looking to recruit, as Brian says, people who like you.
Look like you, yeah.
They look like you. They
Went to
come
the
from the
same
area.
school.
They school like you, and
Yeah.
you don't even know you're biased. And therefore, that's why companies have always to be auditing those kinds of systems, promotion systems, everything to make sure those and we all have those biases.
Yes.
You know. But I just thought the term unconscious bias was coming to my mind when Brian was speaking.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. I think it is a great point. And I want to ask Heidi Ann, because Heidi Ann, if you would recall in our introductory conversation, you made a point about the disparity, I guess, in programs for young women and
Right.
programs for young men. And I really want that point to come out because I think it is connected directly to what we're talking about here.
Right. So we were speaking at a time before this, and I was saying that because the crime situation is so prevalent and so much in our face, that most of the programs that we design are geared towards turning youths away from crime, and we are not creating programs to empower the young women who now don't have the support system that I have, that others may have, that Brian explained. Not all young women are privileged to have that type of support. And now the ones like myself, need to step up and bring along a young woman, go and empower young women. And we need to create programs that would empower them and encourage them to find their purpose in life, right? So that was one of the things we were discussing, correct?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do, because creating the program is one issue. Then how do you get people to want to be in it? It always amazes me. Just recently I was reading about it, where you have these, let's call them the bad boys, and young ladies like to be around bad boys, 3, 4, 5 of them, and how do you convince them that the future is not there?
Not there.
It's somewhere else. Heidi, I would love to hear your strategies to deal with that. It's difficult.
It's difficult because I will always say it starts from home, and a lot of young women are not being socialized in a way where they understand that there's more out there and they can go and get it. I had the privilege of talking to a group last weekend where I'm asking them, well, what do y'all want? And they cannot answer. Like, they don't even know themselves what they want. And how do we empower them? Is it our school system? How do we create programs that we get them involved in? Another thing that I noticed as being a youth development officer is that we tend to create these one-size-fits-all programs where it's something that you creating and you want it to work for everybody. Do we create sustainable programs? Is it a program that looks good on the television? Where's the sustainability? Going and speaking to one session and then we leave the community. And where's the follow-up? There's no follow-up. And the young persons, like Brian said, they're not like how at my time. They know they could tell you one time, nah, they're not going to work and they're not going to listen to you anymore because they're saying they're not making any sense. They could tell you that. Yeah. So when you have this one size fit all program and they say that's not for me, so you can't even sometimes get them to come out and attend these programs. You have to lure them with stipends and different money and things like that. And I tend to think that it starts with the home. We have an obligation, like mothers, our nature instincts, but are we so focused on making it in life that we forget our household, we neglect our household? And that's the one challenge with women. As much as we want to make it in life, we still have a responsibility to nurture the young ones, because aren't we the ones that emotional and connect to our children? So we have a responsibility still. and it's finding the balance.
Brian, I see you
Brian,
smiling.
you chopping now.
I know that smile. I know that smile. I just want to
know
say
you're gonna
that,
run out of time, but
yeah.
you want to smile, right? I get what Heidi Ann said.
Yeah.
I understand it, but I'm willing to say that that is also part of the problem we have, right? Why is it that the responsibility is on the woman? No, I understand. So it may be a rhetorical question, right? That's the reality. COVID has been gender regressive. But why is it that it is women alone, whether in a job, whether that is a TTOC, whether that they have to take on the burden of life and children and all the issues. And then, as I said, it's also very important for women who are leaders to be sensitive to that, because privilege, because you could afford a babysitter, before you could afford a driver, because you have a grandmother who, a grandfather, you could say, do this, do that.
Help me out.
Not
everybody has that.
Women have that, right? So I'm saying that why I smile was I understand totally what Idean was saying, but it is also part of the thing that I believe as an ally and a woman's advocate and a woman's leadership advocate and leadership development, that it still rubs me the wrong way. I'm not saying that directly to Heidi, and I understand it, but I think that is part of the socialization that we have to do. I feel that we have to nurture, train, educate boys, young men and men to flip the script.
And I think that is, and I'm seeing the comments coming in. So guys, I know that sometimes I hate this job as a moderator. I say yes all the time, and then I remember, oh my God. But I think that you definitely are seeing, the point that Heidi Ann made about that home environment. And the reality is, and I think we all do, we know people who literally raised themselves. We know people who didn't grow up in a home environment, and they probably had to look from afar and look at other people and how they were raised to understand how that, how the dynamic works. And I think that Brian makes a very important point, that it's not just the responsibility of women, even though a lot of home environments, you do see more women. COVID has really done a number on the family structure and the family unit. And simple things as, getting up at 4 in the morning. I know some people think about, you could structure your day to travel differently, but the reality is that a lot of homes, their day starts at 4 a.m. just to get to work and get to school at a decent hour. So, all of those dynamics come into play in a very real way for us as a society. We do have to wrap up. I'm really sorry to do that. I know that I wanted to beg for more time, but I don't think Lovey would give it to me. I want to give the 3 panelists, and I'm sorry Evie couldn't join us because, I don't know, we might have been here until 2 o'clock, but, I think it would have been quite an exciting conversation. But I do want to give Martin, Brian, and Heidi Ann, you all have 1 sentence. I'm sorry, but that is just how it is. You have 1 sentence. Go. Martin, first.
All right. We have progressed. We have a long way to go. Let's anchor the change and move on to the next level.
Brian.
Let's not get complacent. We have made progress, but we still have too far to go. Not an ideal situation, and we need to work on changing it now.
Thank you. And I'm leaving the lady for last. Bring us home, Heidi Ann. Bring us home.
Creating an enabling environment calls for multiple measures and to be adopted and policies to be implemented nationally. To create an inclusive environment for women to thrive. I'll cut it short.
Oh gosh, thank you so much.
So much I wanted to say.
I know, Heidi Ann, Martin, and I'll tell you, the people in our participants are commenting as we speak. I'm seeing comments coming in. So, I wish that you all could go in, and our other panelists, please go in. You can respond to some of the comments, make your own points, continue the conversation. I think that would be great. I want to thank you, Brian, Martin, Heidi Ann, for bringing us to this point, being a tremendous panel. I'm sorry Evie could not have joined, but I think we've had a great conversation, a really enriching conversation. Folks, it's been really my privilege, 3 great panels. I could not have asked for a better group of people to spend a Saturday morning with over coffee and having good conversation. Thank you so much for that. Let me just turn it over now to Sonja Johnson, the executive member, chair of the Women's Commission of the TTOC and the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chess Association, to give the vote of thanks, and then I'll come back in and just give some wrap-up pieces as part of our panel program. Sonja?
Thank you so much, Nicole. And I want to just say good morning. I know now it's afternoon to everyone. And as Nicole already said, I'm sure, like what she said, this was time well spent. There's these few hours, this Saturday morning. I know many of us are busy, but I know this was time well spent. Of course, the success of such a forum can't really happen without the help of many. And the first I want to really highlight the speakers, starting with Tricia Smith, the president of the Canadian Olympic Committee, who really got the ball rolling with much of her insights, and of course, followed by the 3 different panels, those who were under the Changing the Game, the contributions that women make to society, and finally providing that enabling environment for women to thrive. Of course, all the speakers, I just want to say thank you personally, because when we called you, you said yes, and that yes caused this outcome today. So of course, our heart goes out to you. And I also wanted to thank Nicole, because I mean, even before this today, Nicole was saying, Sonja, how are we going to do this with all these kind of quality and caliber of speakers? But she did. She's a consummate professional and an expert in her game and in her field. So we want to thank her for what she's done today. And of course, my fellow members on the TTOC Executive Board, of course, led by Diane, of course, who provided the direction and so on for this particular, as the previous chair of the Women's Commission, in terms of how this could perhaps unfold today. And specifically, I want to mention some other individuals who, when this opportunity came up, who helped me and reached out. Of course, Catherine Ford, and other members of the Women's Commission, Donna May Knight from the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, because of course, getting that community voice, and of course, Mr. Brian Lewis, the immediate past president, of course, in terms of getting guidance towards this. We have the members of the media, social and traditional media, who of course are with the TTOC no matter what in there, as they try to execute on their mandate. And last but not least, why it is we're here today, we had a constituency to satisfy with these kinds of conversations, the participants, the local ones, those from the region. I'm seeing from Haiti and Turks and Caicos, and of course, international as well. I mean, the beauty about having these virtual discussions, that it allows us to really make this a global conversation. And I really, really appreciate that you took your time out, even in your different time zones, to spend with us this morning. So once again, on behalf of the TTOC, thank you. Nicole?
Thanks very much, Sonja. And thank you for your really kind words. And I have to say, I could not have done any of this without my really, without our partner in crime, Lovey Santana. Lovey has been in the background working so well for us. I know she is not, she's not one for always stepping into the spotlight, but we couldn't do any of this without Lovey. And I know that Sonja and I really, we were really thankful for your support throughout. I want to make the point, as we started this conversation. So just to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, we heard from 3 very distinguished and from 3 great panels today. When we talk about changing the game, and we had a lot that we wanted to get across in talking with Sonja. As she said, we really did want to bring a lot of ideas forward. And in fact, she even challenged me to say, what key actions can we get out of this session? So when we talk about changing the game, I think we really need to think about how we debunk myths, how we address as women in leadership, how we put aside the whole question of imposter syndrome, but also how do we embrace the concept of allyship and supporting one another, allowing people to support us, but also asking for that help when we need it and not being afraid. I think that you heard from our panelists in that session. Let's not shoot ourselves down before we even step into this space. Let's go brave. Let's say that we, believe that you have everything, but also when you make a misstep, or when you feel that, your confidence waning, go easy on yourself. Recognize that we are, that we are human, but that we are also very good at what we do, and have that belief and confidence in yourself to step into this space. And, also don't be afraid to ask for help, but also don't shy away from becoming the mentor to other women, as well as to other young men, to young men who may need it, and to help that guidance and that flow. I want to thank Raquel and Carrie Ann and Cleo, and for their contributions, as well as Nadine and Esther and Elizabeth, and all of those that we would have heard from as well, Dr. Sasha Sutherland. In our second installment, our second panel spoke very cogently to the question of women involved in volunteerism, women working in communities, areas where women sometimes have to deal with the question of safety and managing their safety. And I think that we heard a lot from them in terms of how do we move forward. And then finally, our panel, Brian, Heidi, and Martin, really challenged. I think they challenged each other as well as ourselves in terms of our own thinking, the notion of how we create an enable environment, and that whole question of balance, and how do we maintain the balance? How do we fight for the balance? How do we fight for our space as women? How do men support us in creating that enabling space? Martin spoke to unconscious bias, what we all walk around with, and how do we make sure that we do the necessary self-work, as well as how we conduct our own audits in the room. And I think that is entirely critical in terms of how we move forward. So some really vibrant, interesting, quality food for thought that I hope we all found value with. I hope and I hope that we can all take it and apply it in our everyday lives, and how we deal with each other, how we work together. A lot of you in the chat have asked to be in contact with some of our panelists. I think that a lot you can reach them inside of the chat, in terms of they can share their information with you. You can also reach out to them via LinkedIn. I believe that you may be able, I really don't want to put the TTOC on the spot to manage a host of inquiries, but I think that you may be able to reach out if there are specific people that you want to speak with for some of the programs that you are working on, because I know that some of you have shared some of your own programs in your respective communities. You can use the opportunity to reach out to us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to thank you for spending the time with us, and for really being responsive to what we've had to share. We've had a great morning. It's been my privilege and my pleasure to moderate and to kind of take us through the morning's conversation. And I really hope that you found great value, and it has energized you. It certainly has energized me. Thank you for spending Saturday morning with us. This has been the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee's Advancing Women in Leadership's 60th edition. I look forward, God willing, to seeing you and more of you and even more people for session 7 next year. At some point, God willing, we'll all be here. And thank you so much. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, wherever in the world you are. Thanks so much, guys.